Welcome to Are You Quizzing Me? I am Vineet Nair with my co-host Aditya Kashyap. This is a quizzing trivia podcast show. Join us as we dive deep into history, science, pop culture, and so much more. Let's get quizzing. Welcome to episode number 75 of Are You Quizzing Me? Your favorite quizzing and trivia podcast show. Today's episode is an America-themed episode, with all the questions being related to the United States of America, which is celebrating its 248th Independence Day. So let me take this opportunity to wish all our listeners from the US a very happy 4th of July. Happy Independence Day, folks. Our 75th episode is also a milestone episode for this podcast. I don't think neither Aditya nor I expected to reach this number when we started this podcast a year and a half ago. It's made all the more special by the presence of a fantastic guest quizmaster joining us all the way from New York, Mr. Garry Levy. An accomplished and prolific quizmaster, Garry runs a quizzing company called Let's Go Trivia since 2016. His company hosts more than 1,000 pub quizzes per year, apart from corporate events for such giants such as MasterCard and Fordham University. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome Garry to our humble little podcast on this special America-themed episode. Welcome to the podcast, Garry.
Thank you, Vineet. Hi, Addy. Great to be here, even though we're about 15 time zones and a couple of oceans apart. But thank you for having me on. It's an honor, and I love your podcast. And I think we're going to have a lot of fun today. I got a bunch of American-themed questions for you for this July 4th episode, and you know, maybe I'll stump you. Maybe you'll just know enough American culture that you'll knock it out of the park, as the Americans say. So let's see how it goes. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, welcome, Garry. Wow, 248 years of the United States of America. That's insane. And 4th of July means that the USA is a Cancerian, I guess. So make what you will of that. Okay, all right.
Oh, God. Okay, so let's kick off this episode without any further ado. I will first be asking the audience question, which I will be answering at the end of this episode. So to all our listeners, try and guess the answer to the question by the end. The question for today is this. Popular history suggests that this originated at a club in New York City in the mid-1870s, where it was invented by Ian Marshall for a banquet hosted by Lady Randolph Churchill, mother of Sir Winston Churchill, in honor of presidential candidate Samuel J. Tilden. The success of the banquet made it fashionable, later prompting several people to request it by referring it to the name of the club where it originated. What am I talking about? I will reveal the answer to this question at the end of this episode. I can just see that Garry already knows the answer to this, so I'm just going to ask him to hold it in until the end of the episode. We will give you a chance to guess the answer.
I think I know. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure I know it. So I won't give anything away. But yeah, and it's still known today. Isn't that correct?
Yes, it is. So that's all the clues for that question. We will answer that at the end of the episode, so everybody stay tuned. So let's kick off our regular round of quizzing today with the first question from our fantastic guest. Garry, take it away.
Okay, so who am I asking? I'm asking both of you, correct?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so I don't know if this question is super easy or super hard, because I don't know if you get this on your news or on TV, or if it's just something that's known in India. It's definitely known here, but here's the question. What eating competition is held on July 4th in Coney Island, Brooklyn every year? What eating competition is held on July 4th in Coney Island, Brooklyn every year?
Aditya is smiling. I have a feeling he knows this.
I do. I actually have kept up with the news on this, and there was some recent controversy related to this competition. So I know the answer. Vineet, you want to give it a shot?
Oh, okay. So, eating competitions in America. I wonder what it could be. Since you said Coney Island, is it a hot dog eating competition?
It is a hot dog. So it's been going for a good few years, and the world record for the number of hot dogs eaten at this competition. It's by an American guy called Joey Chestnut, who dethroned a Japanese guy who was the annual champion until 2007, somewhere around there. And Joey Chestnut stepped in and dethroned this Japanese guy called Kobayashi. But anyway, in 2020, Joey Chestnut ate the world record at this competition number of hot dogs. Take a guess how many he ate.
Oh my God. This is America. Everything is supersized. So I'm going to go 112. I don't know if that's even close to the number or maybe it's too much. But
I'm going to go a little more conservative. I'm going to say 80.
Addy is the closest. He did 75. 75 hot dogs.
Oh my God.
And I think he always gets close to 60 or a little above 60 every year. And he's won it 16 of the last 17 years. And one American guy won it one year. I guess he just had an off year. Maybe he had a stomach bug or something. I don't know. But on this month, and Addy mentioned this, he was banned from participating in this year's hot dog competition because it's sponsored by Nathan's Hot Dog, which is a big brand of hot dog, like the sausage. Nathan's sponsors the competition. And Joey Chestnut had gotten a sponsorship from a company called Impossible Foods, which is a competitor of Nathan's. Ooh. Now, just a sponsor, I guess, in his everyday life for other things he did. And Joey Chestnut claimed that the Nathan's changed the rules just to ban him. But it turned out that Major League Eating, which is the body that oversees the competition, yes, there's an organization called Major League Eating. I kid you not. They said that he's allowed to participate this year. And just one last thing, Major League Eating has a logo, and their logo is like an arm holding a fork. Only in America, guys. Only in America.
Only in America.
Couldn't have started us on a better note. Interestingly enough, Impossible Foods does fake meat. So they're doing plant-based meat as well. So they're a competitor in a slightly different way where they are bringing in, non-animal-based meat.
I really don't get the concept of plant-based meat, frankly. Meat is meat, plant is plant. Why do you want to mix the two? Controversial opinion. I hope I don't get cancelled for this, but
I know this is the Indian in you talking, Vineet, because we are used to having a lot of vegetarian meals, but obviously a lot of other countries which do a lot of meat. And I lived in Singapore, so the concept of not having meat on a regular basis is frankly not something that we are used to in a lot of other countries. So yeah, it makes sense in those places.
A couple of years ago at the Nathan's hot dog eating contest, in the middle of the contest, when, they're I think they have water, and he dips the hot dog with the bun and the meat in the water to soften it. And, it's just, it's fascinating to watch. Like, it makes you sick almost watching it, but it's just, you can't take your eyes off it. But in the middle, you can look this up on YouTube. In the middle of the competition, I guess some protester ran up on the stage to protest some nonsense. And Joey Chestnut, without missing a beat, like, he grabbed the guy by the headlock and just kept eating. like nothing was going to stop him. Yeah.
Oh my God. This is literally so American. It just cannot be any other country.
Interestingly, Joey Chestnut released a statement assuring his fans that no matter what, he will be eating hot dogs on July 4th. So any Joey Chestnut fans out there, fret not. There is hot dog eating happening. And by the way, I got to mention, there was an NPR article based off of this. And I'm a connoisseur of great headlines. So NPR's headline for this was, Hot dog eating champ Joey Chestnut won't compete this July 4th. What's the beef? NPR did a great job right there.
Yeah, the headline's going to write themselves.
Okay. Nice.
Fantastic question, Gary. Thanks for that. It's a very fun question. I am sorry to say I'm going to have to lower the mood a little bit because mine is the next question is a favorite chestnut of mine from American history, but not a particularly happy one. So it's a long question. The beginning of the first part of the question is mostly just some context for our audience as well, for those who may not be familiar with American history. So I'm just providing a little bit of context. The Indian Removal Act was signed into law by President Andrew Jackson on May 28, 1830. The law was effectively proposed to evict tribes from their ancestral lands in the East, thereby clearing the way for white settlers. What followed was a period of unprecedented suffering in the history of the tribes, the majority of which experienced removal, depopulation, disease, and untold pain throughout the 1830s and in the decades to follow. As the Choctaw tribes, or Choctaw Nation, was the first tribe to be removed, one Choctaw chief described the journey from Mississippi to Indian Territory as the beginning of a trail of tears and death. It should be noted that the Choctaws lost over 1/4 of their population from the journey. Other indigenous nations like the Chickasaw, the Creek, and the Seminole have also been ravished by the effects of the Indian Removal Act. So this is the historical context in which this question is set. Like, these nations are going through one of the worst periods in their history. In March of 1847, the peoples of the Cherokee and Choctaw nations gathered at two separate meetings. The Cherokee met at Fort Gibson in the Western Cherokee Nation, and in the days that followed, representatives from the Choctaw Nation congregated in Scullyville. The two tribes had met to raise money for a specific cause. Together, they collected an amount in excess of $800. The amount of money raised in itself was impressive, considering it was donated by communities that had relatively small populations at the time. When adjusted for inflation, it's equivalent to a little over $25,000 in today's money, making the gift even more remarkable. As I mentioned, they were going through horrible periods in their history at the time. So my question to you, Gary, and to Aditya, what were they raising the money for? So any guesses? Does anybody know the answer right off the bat?
I'm just going to take a stab and say weapons.
No, they did not raise the money for weapons. Aditya.
Yeah, weapons would be a pretty solid guess, but knowing Vineet, it wouldn't be that easy. So, was it some kind of food? It's really short in the dark. Some kind of food that they were trying to buy, some seeds or something. I don't know.
You're very warm. Very, very warm.
Okay.
But not quite there yet.
Okay.
Equipment to farm?
No. You were closer with food.
Was it some old world food that they thought was, I don't know, extremely nutritious, extremely...
How about grain?
No, I need a little more specific answer. They were raising money for a specific cause. And I'll give you a clue. Okay, so this is my clue for you. It was not for anything happening in the United States.
Oh, for the potato famine? Was it at the same time? Am I in the wrong time frame? Were they raising money for the potato famine?
You're absolutely right. They were raising money for the Irish potato famine.
Oh, shame on me. Jesus, you think, how could I not get that? Addy, come on, can we edit that part out?
Gary, you and I sound the exact same, so the audience will be able to tell who it
All right.
Okay, yeah. Was it for the famine?
He had an Irish
Yeah. Oh, boy. That was a tough one.
Yeah, but that's an interesting trivia. Wait.
The irony of our first two questions, Vineet, one is about gorging yourself on hot dogs and the other one's about starvation.
Oh boy.
So this, as I mentioned, is one of my favorite, most heartwarming, kind of wholesome periods from history. So, obviously, Garry, you know about the Irish potato famine. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to inform our audience about it as well. So this was at the time in the 1830s and 1840s, Ireland's food rations were predominantly potato based. So when a blight hit the crop, there was a huge famine of potatoes, which was devastating in its impact. And what made it worse was that Ireland at the time was under British rule. And so a lot of other food stuff, which could have been diverted to the Irish population, such as cattle grown for meat, was actually exported to England at the time. So that actually made it worse. This is something that India is also quite familiar with. So this, as I mentioned, this famine was a watershed in the demographic history of Ireland as well. The population fell from 8.4 million in 1844 to 6.6 million by 1851. Like 2 million people
died, and a lot emigrated to the United States, and they died on the ships over. They were nicknamed the coffin ships because people they didn't make it over. You know, this is catching a cold, and all the people stuffed inside these ships together, just disease was rampant. So, a lot of people died trying to make it to the United States. And, we shouldn't make light of it, but there's an American comedian called Dennis Leary. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, and he's Irish American, and he did a really funny, he did a really funny bit. He's talking about the famine and the potatoes, and he's like, what I never got about it was Ireland's an island. There's fish all around Ireland. Couldn't they just fish?
Oh, God. That is classic Leary. Very edgy. So this is the part that really kind of touches my heart. So today the Choctaw Irish gift exchange is a vital reminder of the power arising from reciprocal relationships. It's celebrated and memorialized in various contexts. There's a stunning sculpture by Alex Pentak called Kindred Spirits in Ireland. And there's the Irish government, which established a scholarship fund for Choctaw students to study in Ireland. This was most apparent during the coronavirus pandemic, when a huge number of donations were sent from Ireland to the people of the Navajo Nation. Especially hard hit by the medical emergency, the Navajo needed urgent assistance in a way that the Choctaw and the Cherokee did not at the time. The majority of the Irish contributors to Navajo and Hopi Fund acknowledged the Choctaw gift of the 1840s, with one Irishman writing, "A famine doesn't end in a day. Ireland will be here for you as long as you need the support." I was like, that is just beautiful. Among the kind of divisions and hate we have all around the world right now, and it's sweeping practically every nation and every continent, this was such a powerful reminder. A small gesture. I mean, like, these people were hardly in a position to give away money when they themselves needed it so much, but they felt like these people needed it, and they were an ocean away. They're like tens of thousands of miles away, but they had the heart to give it to them. And that established a relationship that's still going strong 150 something years later. So this is a favorite piece of trivia of mine.
And I got it wrong. Shame on me. Okay, my question.
Yes, Garry, hit us.
Okay. Again, I don't know if this one is very easy or difficult. Do you guys know what Mount Rushmore is?
Sure.
With the president's face on it. Okay. Name the 4 presidents on Mount Rushmore.
Oh, okay. Washington for sure. The second, I would go with
Lincoln is there. I know Lincoln is there. Yeah.
Yes. So Washington, Lincoln.
Is John Adams on it? No, I have a feeling like
Andrew
John
Jackson.
Oh.
No.
Oh, it's not even Andrew
You know
Jackson.
these other presidents. They're not obscure presidents like Franklin Pierce or James Polk.
Or Taft.
Taft, yeah. Big Taft.
Who are the presidents?
Jefferson.
I'm assuming it's one of
Jefferson is the third one, so you've one left.
Okay, so who's the fourth? Who's the fourth?
This
Must be one of the
Mount
first
Rushmore-
few presidents.
No, I have a feeling, but I think FDR is after Rushmore, so it's not FDR.
It's not
but
FDR. Not FDR for sure. Not FDR for sure.
But it is somebody more recent than the founding fathers, like not the original. Yeah.
I'll give you two hints. The first hint, he wasn't part of the founding fathers, and he was an early 20th century president whose one of his many nicknames was the Rough Rider.
Teddy Roosevelt.
Teddy Roosevelt. Very good.
Nice. Yeah,
very good. Yeah. And the order, as you look at Mount Rushmore, is Washington, Jefferson, Teddy Roosevelt, and Lincoln. I don't know why they put that in that order, because if you're to go by the order of when they served, it would have been Washington, Jefferson, Lincoln, Roosevelt. And they were chosen for their significant contribution to the United States. Washington, obviously, he was the United States founding father, first president, and so on. Jefferson was chosen to represent expansion, and he signed the Louisiana Purchase, and he authored the Declaration of Independence. Teddy Roosevelt was chosen because he represented conservation and the industrial blossoming of the nation. And then Lincoln, because he led the country through civil war and he believed in preserving the United States at any cost. And the Mount Rushmore gets about 3 million visitors per year. I think it took them to build it. I think it took them 7 or 8 years. Like, it took them a good few years to build it. I shouldn't say build it. I should say carve it. Because it was already there. They just carved it. So I have not been there. I'd love to go. It seems like it's supposed to be absolutely, like, much bigger than what you see in the photos. When you see a human standing next to it, they're tiny.
Sense of scale
compared to how. Yeah, you just can't get a good grasp of how big it is. And it's also, the words Mount Rushmore have become synonymous in the United States with people of whatever industry have achieved that status where their face is etched into a rock. So let's say basketball in the United States, obviously Michael Jordan would be, he's on the Mount Rushmore of basketball. You can argue others, but you can't argue that Michael Jordan doesn't deserve to be on it. So whatever industry it is, Mount Rushmore is used as a synonym, I don't know if that's the right word, for a certain person's contribution to their industry. Like, he's on the Mount Rushmore of, name it, computers or acting or movies or whatever it may be. So yeah, it's a fascinating thing that they did, that they carve faces into stone. Like, it'll be there in a million years.
Yeah.
Unless someone actually intentionally destroys it, like an earthquake or something comes along, but it will be there like long past. So it's a really amazing thing to have, an amazing honor to have bestowed upon somebody. But of course, this is all done after they'd long died. So they'll never know that they're on Mount Rushmore.
It's so interesting because that's such a good question. Because Mount Rushmore, everybody's heard of it. Most people who visit the US probably make a trip to it as well. It's one of those popular tourist spots. And yet, when you asked me what are the 4 presidents, I was stumped for the last 2. So yeah, great question. Pretty cool.
Great question, Garry. Great question.
Yeah, I've asked that here in our game, and they obviously get Washington and Lincoln, I think, because their faces are on each end. For some reason, that's... Washington's first, it kind of sticks out a little bit more. And then Lincoln's at the end, he's kind of looking over that way. But Roosevelt and Jefferson, people are a little... They think FDR, and I think one of you guys said FDR, because he was such a prominent president. And, but yeah, Jefferson and Teddy Roosevelt always stump a lot of people. And it took them, I thought it was 7 or 8 years to build. It actually took them 14 years to build.
Oh, wow.
And... And nobody died during construction.
That's
oddly
impressive.
enough.
That's impressive, yeah.
Considering back then, there wasn't the safety equipment that we have now. But yeah, it's an impressive monument for sure.
Pretty cool. Right. Okay. Well, we are doing some very important American landmarks, I guess. So my question will take us to the New York Times crossword. And
God. No.
New York's, if you are a fan of the New York Times crossword, or even if you aren't, you might have heard of this particular piece of trivia. So let me just put it out there. Jeremiah Farrell published perhaps what is the most famous puzzle in the history of New York Times. It was published in 1996. What was so special about it? So I'm going to keep it very simple. Let's see if you guys can crack it immediately. If not, I'll give you some more hints.
I have a guess. I have a very big guess, but I'm going to let Garry take it because I'm not sure. Okay. I'm like 50-50 on this.
Can I ask a question
Sure,
in order to get a hint? Am I allowed to do that? Is the year 1996 significant to the answer?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay,
then my guess may be wrong, but I'm still sticking to it.
The Olympics was held here in 1996 in Atlanta. It was the middle of Clinton's presidency. Would all the words have been related to the Clinton-Monica Lewinsky affair? I don't know if that was 1996 or 1997.
I think the Monica Lewinsky-Clinton thing happened in his second term, right? If I'm not wrong.
Yeah, I think
96
right.
would have been the fag end of his first term.
Yeah.
Give us a hint, Addy.
Okay, so you actually asked a brilliant question, Garry. 1996 is very important to the answer as well. But before I give a hint, Vineet, do you want to clue us in maybe towards where you are headed? Before giving the answer entirely?
As I said, I'm 50-50 on this. So I'm going to ask you a very pointed question. If the answer to that is yes, so then I do know the answer and I'll keep my mouth shut. If the answer to that is no, then obviously I don't. So if I told you Star Wars and Star Trek, would that ring a bell?
No. It has nothing to do with those franchises, no.
No, it's not doing with the franchises. I'm talking about one of the answers to the puzzle.
Then you might be in the ballpark, I guess. Yeah. Okay. So before I give you any more chances to answer this question, I'm going to give you one hint. Though I feel like both of you are pretty warm right now, but I'm just going to give you one more hint. This was published on November 5th, 1996.
So that's probably the first Tuesday in November. That's election day, presidential election day. Would that be? Yeah, because Clinton he was voted in the end of 92. So...
The moment you said November 5th, my mind went to Guy Fawkes. Remember the 5th of November.
No.
But that's not significant in America than November 5th is an election day. So all the clues were about the presidential candidates?
Yes, very close. Can you just give me a little bit more of a specific answer?
All the answers were about Clinton.
So they weren't about Clinton or about the other guy specifically, but there was something very special about this crossword that the crossword setter managed to achieve and hence made it into the crossword, I guess, history books. There was one specific clue that was exceptional, I guess. That's the only way to describe it. One specific clue and one answer to that clue that was exceptional.
Okay. Garry, do you mind if I guess it?
Of course, go ahead.
Is it that there were two possible answers to the same clue?
Yeah. I think you're right at the answer. Go for it.
So there are these crossword puzzles which are published, I think, only by the New York Times, where the puzzle setter will give you a clue and the number of words will correlate to one or another answer. So you could say, for example, a famous example of that is a space-based something, and the clue was it was 4 words each, 4. So it could be Star Wars or Star Trek, and both would fit the answer. And I'm guessing for this crossword puzzle, November 5th, as Garry mentioned, election day. So I'm guessing that the answer to the clue would be the two candidates, and both of them would fit in.
You're absolutely right. Okay, so I'll just give it to you. Both of you have combined, basically arrived at the answer. So there were a bunch of down clues, which could be two options between, the answer could be between two options. And across, there was one specific clue which said, lead story in tomorrow's newspaper. Lead story in tomorrow's newspaper. And the answer to that could be Clinton or Bob Dole, who was the other guy. So it was Clinton elected or Bob Dole elected. And Clinton would also be 7 letters and Bob Dole would also be 7 letters. So both Clinton and Bob Dole would fit in, and the down clues would accordingly be different. But either ways, the crossword would make sense. So you could either end up with Clinton elected or Bob Dole elected, and either ways would be a valid solution to the entire crossword. And this was
very clever.
Published on November 5th, 1996.
I think Mr. Farrell must be the only person in America to make both Republicans and Democrats happy at the same time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's a great question. It's a
And
great question.
this one it's called a Schrodinger or a quantum puzzle after the Schrodinger's cat, obviously. So it could be either this or that, and simultaneously both are true. So yeah, you can go check it out. The listeners, I would encourage you to go check it out, because even the down clues make sense regardless of whether Bob Dole is the answer or Clinton is the answer. So I'll give you some examples actually. Like one of the clues for down is short writings. And both bios and bits make sense. So when it's Clinton, it'll be bits. When it's bios, it'll be Bob Dole. So
nice.
And so on and so forth. A bunch of these down clues would then correspond to Clinton elected or Bob Dole elected, and either ways the crossword is solved. Yeah, pretty cool piece of crossword trivia.
Very good.
Nice,
very
nice.
good. My thought, Addy, was that it was the first crossword online. Because the mid-90s...
Oh, that was that was...
That would have been a great guess. Actually, that is an interesting question. I should look up what was the first crossword.
Which was the first puzzle online?
Yeah.
that we know of.
I'm fairly sure the nerds at CERN must have published one in the early 90s, in 91, 92. So, way before the New York Times could...
It would be interesting which New York Times crossword was the first one, given that New York Times is probably the most famous crossword in the world. Yeah.
Yeah. And impossible to solve. Like the answers, once you know the answers, it's obvious. Otherwise, it's just beating your head against a wall.
Right.
Well, that's me anyway. I know people who actually do solve it, but it's not me.
Yeah.
Okay. Garry, back to you.
Okay. So I've tweaked the question based on the fact that your questions are very well thought out and elaborate, and I'm a little more simplistic. So I've stretched the question out from what it originally was and made it a little fatter, if you will. And I'm sure you guys will have a good stab at it. So with any leadership, whether it's in government, in royalty, or in business for that matter, there's a line of succession. There's a person at the top, and then there's the next in line of succession. Okay? So after the US president, name the next 5 people in line of succession to take over. So if the president dies, who's next in line? But if that person also dies, who's next in line? And if that person also dies, who's next in line? And so on. I'll give you some clues, but let's see. The first one's easy. You got to know the first one.
It's the vice president.
The vice president. Okay.
Oh, it's not Tom Hanks? Oh, man.
No, it's not Kiefer Sutherland either.
It's our Martin Sheen. Okay, so you got the first one.
Speaker of the House.
Very good. 2.
Okay, that's where it gets murky after that.
Most Americans won't know this. They will not know this. They'll get the vice president and then that's it.
The oldest person in the Senate majority party.
You are close. You got the Senate part correct, Addy.
Is it the leader of majority in the Senate?
Yes, the president of the Senate. President pro tempore of the Senate. Okay, so there's 3.
Isn't President pro tempore the oldest person? I thought that was the definition of President pro tempore.
I'm not sure about that. But wait, let's park that for the moment and try and get the others.
Okay, so you have 2 left. They're both important positions within the US government.
Secretary of State.
4. Well done. 1 left. Let me know if you want a hint.
I'm tempted to say agricultural secretary just to screw with people who watch Designated Survivor, but
That's 9th, Vineet. That's number 9. So if the first 8 die, the Secretary of Agriculture, who no one could name, would become president.
Honestly, at that point, you just call Tom Hanks. Just call Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
Just call Tom Hanks.
Whoever wants it. Whoever's
free?
played a president in a movie, you get the job.
Yeah.
Secretary of Defense?
That's 6.
Oh, okay.
Oh, very
So
close,
there's
very
somebody
close.
in between. There's somebody in between. If this was the West Wing, we would say the Chief of Staff of the White House, but obviously it's not. Leo McGarry should have been president. I'm just putting it out there. Okay, so...
Do you want a hint?
Who was left? Yes, a hint, please.
Among many things, what do Americans love?
Ooh, sports?
They do love that.
Guns.
Secretary of Weapons, no.
Okay. We already discussed agriculture. I was going to say food, but no, agriculture we discussed. I would say, is it what is the finance minister equivalent, I guess? The
Secretary of the Treasury.
Secretary of the Treasury is 5.
Okay.
So they have 17 in line of succession.
Oh, wow.
Should the president die. I'll read them real quick. So we just did the first 5. Vice President, Speaker of the House, President of the Senate, Secretary of State, Treasury, Defense, Attorney General, Secretary of the Interior, Agriculture, Commerce, Labour, Health and Human Services, Housing and Urban Development, Transportation, Energy, Education, Veterans Affairs, and then Secretary of Homeland Security. I find the Secretary of Homeland Security, if I was in that position, I'd be like, why am I below the Secretary of Transportation? I mean, I'm helping keep the country safe. This guy's taking care of the buses and trains. I deserve it before him.
Oh, boy.
So
It is quite surprising. Now that you mention it, I mean, like, I know the Homeland Security is maybe because it's a pretty new post. I mean, like, Homeland Security is post 2001, right? Post 9/11. So maybe that's why, and they already had this, and you're a newcomer. You're at the bottom of the totem pole.
Yeah, you got to work your way up.
Let me give you a great nugget about how long someone can be president. So it's pretty well known. How many terms can a US president serve for, either consecutively or non-consecutively? 2, which means they can be president for how many years?
8 years, I guess.
8 years.
There is one exception. FDR got elected for a 3rd term, but he died.
But they changed it after him.
Yeah, so FDR's thing was before the term limits thing.
So, in fact, I had this in the trivia and it stumped a lot of people. You can be president for 10 years, and here's how. If you're vice president, right? And if one day before 2 years into your vice presidency, so let's say 1 year and 364 days, the president dies, you can become president, right? You finish out his term and then you can get re-elected twice. So you have 2 years of the guy's term and then your own 2 sets of 4 years. That's 10 years. However, I'm sorry, I did that the wrong way. It has to just go over the 2 year mark.
Yeah.
So it can't be within the first 2 years. It has to, like, if it's one day over 2 years of your vice presidency that the president dies, you become president and then you get 2 more terms. There's essentially 10 years.
But what happens if your president dies within a year? Why is that different?
You finish out their term, but you can only get elected for 1 more full term. You cannot get elected for 2 more.
Oh, okay.
So they use the 2 year mark because it's less than half. I guess that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. You feel bad for the guy. Like, hey, that doesn't count as a full term.
Yeah, right.
You can't round up from 1 to 4.
Yeah, come on. And I'll give you one more great presidential piece of trivia. there's only one US president, besides George Washington, there was only one US president who was not nominated to the presidency in any way, shape or form as either a vice president or a president. Who was it? It was a relatively modern president.
What do you mean by not nominated? Like he was nominated by a party?
Not nominated by the party.
He wasn't elected president or vice president.
Wasn't elected president or vice president.
Interesting. And that's a relatively modern one.
Relatively modern, like in the second half of the 20th century.
Oh, what? Wow.
After Nixon resigned.
Mm-hmm. You're close. You're very warm.
Ford, right?
Say it again, Addy.
Ford. Yeah.
Because Spiro Agnew, Nixon's vice president, resigned, and Ford was given the position. He wasn't elected into the position. And then Nixon resigned and Ford became president.
Oh, okay, interesting. So he was not elected to be vice president.
He wasn't elected to the office.
He got
or president.
Oh, that is insane. Okay.
So within the space of, like, it was a very short space of time, he went from, I can't remember what position he was in the government, to president very quickly. You know, it was like he was the Secretary of Defense in November of 73, and by August of 74, he was president.
He's president.
Wow. It was very quick.
Oh, that's very cool. That's a really cool piece of trivia and really...
And I thought Obama had a fast rise to the presidency.
You guys did great on that, on the succession. That's very impressive, because I tell you, most Americans would have a hard time with that. They'd obviously know the vice president, and maybe a lot would know the Speaker of the House being second, but the next three, because you have to kind of look at the order of what you would say was importance in all these government positions. Again, I think Secretary of Homeland Security would be above Secretary of Energy, just my opinion. But you'd have to kind of look at, Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense even, you would think might be higher than Secretary of the Treasury, but there you go.
True, but that's a very interesting list right there. I love it.
Fantastic
question, Vineet, I believe
Garry.
You're up next.
Yes. So I'm going with something which I am fairly sure will get cracked on the first try, but I'm asking it anyway. A little more modern question. I'm very fascinated by history and the history of various things. So my questions are always biased towards a little bit of history. So this is history regarding business in America, right? These two electrical engineers from Stanford University started their business together, working in a rented garage on Addison Avenue in Palo Alto, California, under the mentorship of Professor Frederick Terman at Stanford during the Great Depression. To formalize their partnership, they tossed a coin to decide on how to name the company they had founded. One of the company's earliest customers was Bud Hawkin, chief sound engineer for Walt Disney Studios, who bought 8 audio oscillators at $71.50 each for use in the animated film Fantasia. I want you to name the 2 electrical engineers I am talking about.
I know this answer, so I will let Garry give it a shot.
I'm going to say that their names are synonymous in this industry, meaning it's their names are attached to what they invented, like Harley Davidson, something like that. Am I correct? Not with Harley Davidson, just with their names.
Yes, their names and the name of the company inextricably linked.
Yeah, basically like Harley Davidson, Ben and Jerry's, stuff like that.
Right. I'm trying to think so it was some kind of movie audio equipment way back. It's the Great Depression.
I
so
wouldn't focus too much on audio equipment. That was just their first product. Nowadays, they're known for something a little more
techy.
Think
so it was
printers, laptops.
Hewlett Packard?
Yes, it is. Bill Hewlett and David Packard.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So the first product was sold to, you said Universal?
Disney for Fantasia.
What What was it? It was audio equipment?
Bud Hawkins, chief sound engineer for Walt Disney, bought 8 audio oscillators for $71.50 each for use in the animated film Fantasia.
Wow.
A little bit of background on this. Bill Hewlett and David Packard graduated with degrees in electrical engineering from Stanford in 1935. Their company started in a garage in Palo Alto during a fellowship they had with past professor Frederick Terman at Stanford during the Great Depression, whom they considered a mentor in forming the company. In 1938, Packard and Hewlett began part-time work in a rented garage with an initial capital investment of $538, which is roughly equivalent to around $10,500 present day money. And in 1939, they decided to formalize their partnership. To decide how the company would be named, they tossed a coin because they were torn between Packard-Hewlett and Hewlett-Packard. So they tossed a coin to decide whose name would come first. And it became Hewlett-Packard, or HP, as we know. It was incorporated on August 18th, 1947, 3 days after India got independence, and went public in November 6th of 1957, and the rest is history. HP, one of the big computer players in the world, and the name was decided on the toss of a coin.
The toss of a coin, that makes me think of Harley Davidson, because obviously if you were to do it alphabetically, it would be Davidson Harley, but everyone who talks about Harley Davidson calls it a Harley. No one ever called it a Davidson.
Nobody called it a Davidson.
Right. So if they tossed the coin and Harley won, Davidson must have been fuming. Nobody says it's Davidson. My name should have been first. That's great. Great question, Vineet. Great question.
Nice.
All right, you guys ready?
And great crack, Gary.
Yeah, well done. All right,
okay.
Gary, you're.
Let me see. All right. Again, I'm thinking, based on how awesome you guys have been so far, I think this question is going to be easy, but let's see. For what are the following Americans known? I'll give you their 3 names. Jerry Lawson, Isaac Singer, and George Eastman. For what are the following Americans known? Jerry Lawson, Isaac Singer, George Eastman.
Eastman?
Eastman thinks of Eastman Kodak. So is it...
Yeah, that's what I was also thinking.
A color film, or film, something to do with cinema? Technicolor? I'm shooting in the dark here.
I mean, you're spot on about Eastman. So you've kind of got it right. So it's inventions. They all invented something. Now, can you,
okay.
You've just said what George Eastman invented, which is the Kodak camera.
Mm-hmm.
What about Isaac Singer and Jerry Lawson? I can give you hints if you want.
Isaac Singer, I'm guessing, would be a sewing machine?
Correct.
Oh, wow. How did you get that?
My mom has a Singer sewing machine.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So okay. Jerry Lawson invented something, and I'm sure probably, I won't give you the decade just yet. Probably it was very basic back in the day, but now it's used everywhere, mostly by a younger generation.
Okay.
Jerry Lawson.
His name has no connection to his product.
No, I know. You gave us 2 gimmies and one with a little bit of a kick. So, Jerry Lawson. Younger generation. Which makes me think technology. Did he work for Xerox?
No, I don't know. He may have. I could look it up.
I'm thinking something to do with gaming, perhaps. Is it the video game controller or something?
The console, the video game console he created called the Fairchild Channel F video game console. One of the old school plastic things, looked like an old cassette player. The cartridge you popped in, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if it wasn't for him, there'd be no Xbox, there'd be no Nintendo, there'd be no PlayStation if it wasn't for Jerry Lawson.
Wow. Damn.
And we wouldn't have spent a lot of our childhood blowing into those cartridges to make them work.
So here's a little trivia about George Eastman. So you obviously know who Paul McCartney is. Do you remember his wife Linda?
Sure. Linda
His
McCartney,
wife Linda.
yes.
She was Linda McCartney. So do you remember what Linda did besides being in the band with Paul? What her occupation was?
She was into fashion, right? She was a fashion designer?
She was a photographer. And Linda's maiden name is Eastman because she's from the Eastman family, who are, believe her, from New York, if memory serves me correct. So I don't know if she's a daughter or granddaughter of George Eastman.
Wow.
So he invented the Kodak camera. She's a descendant of his. She was a photographer. And of course, she ended up marrying Paul McCartney.
And if they are from New York, then the name is very much on the nose. Eastman from the East Coast. Come on. They could have done better. Oh, yes. For Jerry Lawson console. Now I have to sear that into my brain. I did not know. And what is the name of the console that he invented? Gary, if you could just repeat that once.
It is called the Fairchild Channel F. F for Frank. Fairchild Channel F.
Channel F. Nice. I have to look that. I am not particularly aware of that, but that console model, we'll have to look that one up. Like, we all seen the Atari and the Nintendos and all, but this a Fairchild F is that's something absolutely no. Fantastic question, Gary. Fantastic.
Yeah, pretty cool. Very unexpected. I love it.
Adi.
Okay. Let me try to bring it home with a question that connects India and the United States of America. So that should be a big enough hint, but let me tell you what the question is. There are only 2 megacities in the world where large carnivores thrive in the urban areas because their natural habitats have been encroached upon by human buildings. Which are these 2 large megacities in the world? And what are the animals in question?
Large carnivores?
Yeah.
Wow. Tell me, Gary, you live in New York. Are there like random tigers roaming around New York?
Yes, but they're disguised as humans.
I think Gary's talking about the Macy's parade.
Now, when you say mega cities, is that what is that the expression you used, Addy? Mega cities?
Yeah,
I assume you mean by population.
Exactly.
Okay, mega city.
So then the options from India would be either Delhi or Bombay. Or Mumbai, to be more politically correct. Just going off population, like the 2 most populated cities are Delhi and Mumbai.
Sure. My metropolitan areas, but yeah, it is one of Delhi and Mumbai. And which feline species? I'll give you the hint. It's a feline species.
It's a big cat.
It's a big cat that roams human inhabited areas in both these cities.
Roams freely?
I mean, like, obviously I've seen big cats, but not like a big cat.
Okay, so when I say roams, it's not like you'll see it on the street walking past, but it is pretty much in the metropolitan area, and they have ventured into urban spaces very often.
I have a politically incorrect answer.
Oh, please don't say it. We don't want to get cancelled.
Are you talking about the cougar? And is this Mumbai and Los Angeles?
The answer is half correct. It is Mumbai and Los Angeles.
Wait, what?
Right. But it's not the cougar though. Do you know which feline species are?
I was making a joke on the Real Housewives thing,
I figured.
Reality shows. This has nothing to do with that. Okay.
Nope.
Is it a mountain lion?
Hey, you're right. Mountain lions in LA and in Mumbai. Vineet, any guess?
There are mountain lions in Mumbai?
No. There's another. There's a different feline species in Mumbai. So mountain lions are in LA.
Okay, because I would have to be careful the next time I flew down to Mumbai. Okay, I'm completely clueless. Maybe a leopard or a
leopards.
Panther?
Leopards are the ones that are in Mumbai that you technically are in urban spaces as well. Yeah, so leopards in Mumbai and mountain lions in LA. And these are the only two huge metros in the world where you will find big feline species in the same urban areas that human beings occupy. But you guys got that very quickly. And since we are at the last question, you know what? I'm going to throw a freebie here.
Shout out to the Real Housewives, by the way. They led me to the question, even though it was...
Yeah. So let me give you one more question. And this one, since we were in LA, I will just move over to another Californian city. And this is Berkeley. In the University of California, Berkeley, what is a reserved parking spot for that is not one of the usual spaces that you would find in most other public areas? UC Berkeley has a specific reserved parking spot that is not commonly found in most other public areas. So I'm not talking about, like, say, for handicapped or disabled people or differently abled people. I'm talking about a very specific thing that you'll only see in UC Berkeley. What are these parking spots for? Vineet has the answers. So, Gary,
I want to flex so hard, but we have a guest. So, Gary, it's all yours.
Ooh, my oh my. I'm wondering, is it for like a past student in honor or in memory of a past student, or is it
that would be a very huge population, and the university probably can't afford to do that. So it is a much narrower criteria.
The mascot of their sports teams?
Mascot of sports teams. That's the American in you talking, Gary. Keeping your priorities right, the mascot. But no, it's not the team mascot, no.
Go on, Vineet, you were going to give me a hint?
Yes, they're mostly men past the age of 50. That's my first clue.
Is it just one parking spot?
No, there are a few. I think around 10 last count.
There are eight. According to this 2022 article that I have.
There are 8 specific parking spots that aren't assigned for a regular car or someone with a disabled tag or something like that. But and it can't be electric vehicles. That's too reserved.
That also is getting pretty common these days. It is for a special designation. And again, like a lot of places might have reserved spots for, like, I don't know, the faculty or something like that. So it isn't so it isn't something that is generic like that. It is something very specific. And it's a very, very narrow group of people, a very small group of people that fit
my
the
second
criteria.
clue would be, I'm not sure if Caltech has something like this, but if Caltech did, there'd be a much bigger number there.
This must be specific to the colleges, which I'm not familiar with. I never even went to college, so...
It isn't specific to UC Berkeley as such. It's just that they happen to have this.
Okay, my additional clue will be the marking on the parking spot is marked NL. N for New York, L for Los Angeles.
That's a great hint, yeah.
NL. If I'm on the clock here, I'm going to run out of time.
Okay, you know what? I'll give you one last hint because Vineet has given you some fantastic hints.
Sure, and I'm still not getting it.
No, don't worry. It is a question that if you know it, you know it. But if you don't, it is a tricky one. If you do fit this criteria, you might also have a much bigger bank account. Specifically, I believe, is it $1 million?
It's $1 million.
Euros?
It's $1 million.
Roughly
around $1 million. Yeah, you may not get the entire $1 million. You may have had to share it with somebody.
Yeah, true. You're entitled to $1 million if you fit the criteria for this parking spot.
Nobel laureate?
Hey, there we go.
Ding.
That's it.
Is that it?
Yes, yeah. Nobel laureates.
Oh, well, the NL, obviously. I would have never got it without the NL, Vineet.
You got it. Oh, well done.
Why specific to UC Berkeley?
It's interesting because the history apparently suggests, or legend suggests at least, that there's a Polish poet, and I'm probably going to butcher the name, but I'll try it, Czesław Miłosz, who was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1980. And he just went up to the university staff and admin and he asked for a parking spot and they just gave him a designated parking spot. And since then, it became a tradition for Nobel laureates to have designated parking spots in the UC Berkeley campus.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I don't think I would have got that without the hints. No way.
Well, that's a great crack, though.
I have, again, before we wind up, this is just me being greedy, but there's this question I really wanted to ask today. So I'm just going to ask it quickly. We'll go run through this quickly. So this is a sports question because we've been neglecting sports quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Hey, excuse me, Vineet. We did start off with Major League eating, might I remind you?
with the Mount, needless to say, with the Mount Rushmore of Major League eating, Joey Chestnut.
Okay, go for it.
Standing at an impressive 6 feet 4 inches tall, with lanky arms perfectly designed to tie his opponent in knots, he was an accomplished wrestler as a young man. His wrestling record was 299-1 over a period of 12 years, with his only ever defeat happening at the hands of Hank Thompson. He once challenged an entire crowd of onlookers after dispatching an opponent saying, "I'm the big buck of this lick. Any of you want to try it? Come and wet your horn." His grappling exploits earned him an outstanding American honor in the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. Who is this wrestler I speak of?
I know this. He was also a bartender at one point of his life.
Nice.
Yes.
I didn't know that part, but I do know the answer. I guess both of us do. This would be Lincoln.
Yes, this is Abraham Lincoln. I was itching to ask this question because I wanted to give you this particular clue. More than the question, I was excited about the clue. The clue was going to be actors who portrayed him on screen include Henry Fonda, Gregory Peck, Chris Christopherson, Lance Henriksen, and Brendan Fraser.
And Daniel Day-Lewis.
And Daniel Day-Lewis. You cannot forget Daniel Day-Lewis.
If I say Daniel Day-Lewis, everybody gets it. But so this
okay. I
specifically intended to... Yeah. So bonus points if you can tell me in which movie Brendan Fraser played Abraham Lincoln.
No clue.
Is it that vampire hunter thing?
No,
Lincoln
that's not Brendan Fraser. That's not Brendan Fraser. That was Benjamin Hall, I think his name is. That was not Brendan Fraser. This is like peak Brendan Fraser, peak Elizabeth Hurley, 2000 movie. Elizabeth Hurley playing the devil.
I have no clue.
So the movie's called Bedazzled. Elizabeth Hurley plays the devil, and she provides 7 wishes to Brendan Fraser's character. The only problem is each wish goes wrong in a horrible way. So when he wishes to be president of the United States, he finds himself in the Ford Theatre as Abraham Lincoln just as he's about to be killed.
Oh boy.
So Brendan Fraser has a blink and you miss it role as Abraham Lincoln.
I'll give you a quick Lincoln trivia. Actually, yeah, let me make this my last question. Why not? It's just popped into my head.
Yes, go for it. Yeah.
Name the 2 denominations of US currency which have Lincoln on it. There's 2. He's the only president that has 2 different currencies with his face on it. Name the 2.
I know this.
I haven't handled much American currency, so I am... Nope. Aditya, you want to take this?
So it's the penny.
Mm-hmm.
The penny has Lincoln because I know this because there is a very interesting episode talking about how we want to get rid of pennies on this YouTube channel called CGP Grey, and he is a big proponent of getting rid of pennies. And he talks about how some of the people who don't want to get rid of pennies are Lincoln enthusiasts, and and he follows that up with, "Why are you guys so mad? He's on the $5 note as well. Just get rid of the penny." So I know it's the $5 bill and the penny.
Yeah. And it's I've asked so many currency questions over the years, and it's amazing that so many people don't know what's on the bills, and a lot of times whoever's on the front of a US bill, whatever's on the back is relative to them. For example, Lincoln's on the front of the 5 and the penny, and on the back is the Lincoln Memorial. On the $10 bill is Alexander Hamilton, who was the first US Secretary of the Treasury. So on the back of the 10 is the US Treasury. Now, the 20 has the White House on the back, but the front is Andrew Jackson. The 50 has Ulysses Grant, and it is Constitution Hall, I think, on the back. And the 100's Benjamin Franklin, who, of course, was not president, but it's US Capitol. No, US Capitol on the back of the 50, and Independence Hall's on the back of the 100. So,
Nice.
you know, there's some connection between the front and the back. It's not kind of random. Yeah.
Good crack, Aditya. The only way I would have gotten was to list every single denomination in the US currency.
I gotta be grateful for India in that sense. We have kept it very simple. You don't have to stress too much. It's
Very few
Gandhi
notes.
all the way. It's Gandhi on every single thing. On every single note, it's Gandhi.
The thing that I find funny about US currency, all the bills are the same. The notes are the same size.
Yes, I read a novel where there's a counterfeiting gang who take $1 notes, bleach them, and then print $100 on the same because they're the same size.
I'm sure it is probably harder than it sounds, but I guess
but
it
it's
works
a
for now.
book. I mean, it's not real life. It's a book.
No, interestingly, I know the different sizes is mostly because to aid blind people. So I wonder how they do it in the US. How are the...
That was my next question, Addy. It's a very simple solution. How do blind people know? What did they do with the money to know what the difference is between the bills? It's a very simple solution.
The numbers are embossed. I'm guessing they're slightly raised.
No.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Is it the position of the metallic strip?
No, they do something to the bill. And you can't change its look, feel, image, color at all. What would you do to distinguish it? If you had a 1, a 5, a 10 and a 50, and obviously the 1 is the same size and weight as the 50, what would you do to distinguish, if you were blind, the 1 and the 50? If you had to put them in your pocket, let's say. If you had to put them in the same pocket.
Wow.
This
Is something to do with the edge? Is it notched? I don't think their bills are notched, right? They're not notched.
They all feel the same, weigh the same, and the same size. So if you're blind...
Do they smell the same?
Smell the same.
Probably not.
They all smell of cocaine, so it's fine.
They spray them with cologne.
Different colognes. $5 bill has Chanel number 5 on it. Okay.
Right.
No, I have no idea. This is a very interesting question.
No clue,
I have
Garry.
no clue.
Very simple. They fold them differently.
Oh.
You fold them differently.
Interesting.
Wow.
Just to keep it simple.
But wait, how? But this is if I am a blind person and I get the note and I fold it in a different way, that makes sense. But how would I know to begin with what denomination of a currency have I gotten?
I'm sure there's someone in your life you could trust to say,
Okay.
here
Right, fair
are the
enough.
hundreds and here are the ones. Just fold the hundreds.
Don't be so cynical, Adi. Come on. This is
I'm
too
not.
I
But that's interesting. They fold it differently.
may be wrong, but I believe the banks will do it for people who are visually impaired.
I was just going to ask. Yeah, the banks probably would also assist in something like that. That is pretty cool.
You'd probably leave the ones as is because you know they're the lowest denomination, but then maybe the 5s in half and then the 10s again and then so on. But you can only fold. I don't know if you know this. Here's a crazy bit of trivia. It doesn't matter the size of any piece of paper. You can only fold it 7 times.
Yeah. I think they tried this on Mythbusters.
They tried this on Mythbusters and they brought like cranes and stuff to do it, and it was a really cool visual because it was a huge piece of paper that they were trying to fold.
Yeah. It doesn't matter the size because it just keeps getting by half. You have to fold it in half each time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Power of exponentials.
And
Pretty
if
cool.
I mean, like theoretically, if you do it 40 times, you would reach the moon.
Yeah, that's true.
Apparently true.
Managed to do it.
I've never tried it, so I'm just going to take their word for it. So, such a fun episode. So there's the audience question that we have remaining because we are about to wind up this episode. So let me put the audience question again and see if my co-hosts can and guest quizmaster can guess the answer to this. So the question again for the audience was: popular history suggests that this originated in a club in New York City in the mid-1870s. where it is invented by Ian Marshall for a banquet hosted by Lady Randolph Churchill, mother of Winston, in honor of presidential candidate Samuel J. Tilden. The success of the banquet made it fashionable, later prompting several people to request it by referring to the name of the club where it originated. What am I talking about? I think Garry already knows, so Adi, Gary's looking to pop, ready to pop right now. The answer's just there.
I'm actually not sure, so I'll let Garry take this one.
I believe it's a Manhattan cocktail.
Yes! Ding, ding, ding. You are right. It is the Manhattan cocktail.
Nice. Very cool.
So
very
here's
cool.
a little nugget about a Manhattan cocktail. The ingredients, the measurements for the ingredients are 2 ounces of rye whiskey, 1 ounce of sweet vermouth, and 2 dashes of bitters. 212. And the phone area code for Manhattan is...
Oh!
212.
Wow.
I don't know if that's just coincidence.
Garry, this is where I know you're wrong. All Hollywood movies tell us that the area code is 555. It's not 212. He's mistaken, my dear audience.
That's right.
It's 555. It's 555.
That's pretty cool. Okay, wow, 212. I had no idea.
212. It's how you remember to make it. So if you're making a Manhattan, just remember that.
You've been a wonderful quizzer. You've given us great answers, great questions. Can you just answer this for me? Why do you guys do ounces? Can we just stop doing ounces and pounds and just do it like the rest of the world and not confuse the hell out of us? I cannot keep up with this.
So what I can understand about the US measurement system, because I grew up in Ireland and we kind of learned both. Now, Ireland has pretty much moved towards the metric system. So all the distances in kilometers and so on. And it's, cause I grew up with both, it's pretty easy for me to switch from one to the other. But what I can understand with the United States, when we were growing up in Ireland, we did imperial. So pounds and stone for weight. So 14 pounds was 1 stone. That was easy to grasp. So if somebody weighed 10 stone, they were 140 pounds. That's just, now the Americans do pounds, but they don't do stone. So somebody weighs 275 pounds. I'm like, that's a lot of pounds. Can we get that like smaller pounds? Why not just 15 stone? And another thing that the Americans do with measurement, which is very funny, and I don't think it's, maybe you guys do it, I don't know. They will explain distance with time. So I live an hour and a half from Manhattan. Mm-hmm. They don't say I live 70 miles. They say I live an hour and a half, which is, you can grasp that to a degree, but also that's not taking into account traffic.
What time of the day do you live 1.5 hours?
50 miles will never be anything else other than 50 miles, but an hour and a half could be 2.5 hours.
True. Which is probably why you can't do that in India. Because in India, the traffic is such a variable, you can never be quite sure how much time it's going to take.
This is a true story. This happened in Bangalore traffic. A group of people in a car, they were stuck in traffic. One of them got really pissed. So he got out, went to a mall, which was like right next to the car because they were stuck right in front of the mall. He went into the mall, went to a shop, tried on a couple of shirts, bought one, came out after 45 minutes, and the car had moved 10 meters in front. True story.
Wow. Fast traffic day in Bangalore.
Yes.
So when I go home to my family in Ireland, I have to switch my brain to Celsius, the metric system, and driving on the other side of the road. So when I get off the plane,
which is the right
like
side
I have to.
It's the right
That's
side.
the right side of the road. It's the right side of the road.
That's what Americans say. They go, "Oh, you're driving the wrong side over there." I'm like, "No, drive on the left." It's the correct side over there.
It's the correct side of the road. I just cannot get by driving on, the right side of the road. That just doesn't make sense. The driving conventions come from the time when people were riding on horses, where your right hand had to be free so that you could wield your sword. Why should we get rid of 1,000 years of tradition just because the Americans think they want to do that? And they invented the car. No, they didn't invent the car. They popularized the car. But then again, this is Independence Day. It's July the 4th. Let them have it.
Don't be mean.
Please don't
Vinny.
cancel me.
That's true.
It's all in good fun. I mean, like, a lot of the things...
They'll bring democracy to your apartment so quickly, Vineet. You don't want to annoy them.
I remember. I'm old enough to remember CNN coverage during the first Gulf War, so I'm keeping my mouth shut after this. Okay. So before we wind up, there's a tradition that we have where every week Adi and I recommend a piece of pop culture, something new or something old, which we want to recommend to our audience, whether it's books, music, movies, podcasts, YouTube channels, anything under the sun. So, Garry, is there anything you want to recommend? Anything new, anything old, anything that's close to your heart that you want to recommend that, please go consume this?
I read all the time, and I don't read fiction. I read all business books or personal development books. And I read a book, I thought it was late last year, earlier this year. And it was the first book I ever read that when I finished it, I started reading it again. It was fantastic. It's by an American writer called Michael Easter. And the book is called The Comfort Crisis. And if you get your hands on it, it's really fascinating. And what he talks about in the book, he goes on a journey up to Alaska into the wild, and he lives for 30 plus days with some friends. And they have to hunt and kill in order to live, in order to eat. They're literally in the wild. But he intersperses that story with how, as a society and as a culture, over time, how we've just become more and more comfortable with everything we do. And he really does a lot of research, from food to exercise to how we live our lives to the social media to TVs and so on, and how little we move now as humans. For example, he says he stood at an airport and he watched inside the airport, where you'll have two escalators and then there's steps in the middle. And he said he watched people for an hour or 2 hours, and he said 2% took the steps, and there wasn't even that many steps. 98% took the escalators. But anyway, so he talks just about how comfortable we have become, and just he delves into the food and what's in our food, and from how we order food now, portions of food, and just how comfortable we become. Now, he's not criticizing the way we live, but he juxtaposes it with the way we lived back in the day, hunters and gatherers, how we farmed, how we lifted, how we dragged, how we carried, how we climbed, all these different things in order to survive, and how we just essentially don't do that now. We've just become comfortable. Like, if you think about, like, how often do you carry any kind of weight over any kind of distance now? Never. We have transportation for it. There's no need for it. So again, he's not criticizing, but it's like how humans were built to carry, how humans were built to sit up straight, how humans were built to eat, not necessarily sitting slouched or whatever it may be, how humans were built not to consume so many calories at a time. But anyway, I could talk for a long time about it. Obviously, it's a really fascinating book. It's called The Comfort Crisis. So if any of your listeners are interested in a great book, or you guys, if you're readers, check it out. I'm sure you can find the audio version online or the Kindle version. So The Comfort Crisis would be my recommendation.
Great. Adi, what's your recommendation for this week?
So I have 3 recommendations for the week. And these are 3 things that I watched recently. The first one, a lot of people might have already seen it on Netflix. If you haven't watched it yet, I would say check it out. It's Baby Reindeer. It's a show that premiered not that long ago. Very intense. It has some very disturbing stuff in it, but also funny in the most dark and British way that you can imagine. So I'd say that is something that's worth checking out. I watched Matilda the Musical, again on Netflix. Brilliant, beautiful. The actress who plays Matilda is just phenomenal. So for her performance alone, you could check that movie out. And the last one is Monkey Man. This is Dev Patel,
yeah.
and it's his directorial debut. It isn't the best action movie out there. There are better action movies, in fact, I'd say. But Monkey Man does an interesting job of how Dev Patel, who is basically now a Hollywood actor, but with Indian origins, kind of telling an Indian story. So it's an interesting kind of a lens to see that cultural, I guess, perspective. So check these 3 things out.
Great recommendations as usual, Aditya. My recommendation for this week is a book. The first recommendation is a book. It's called I'll Be Gone in the Dark. It's written by Michelle McNamara, and it's about her almost borderline obsessive search for a serial killer who was known as the Golden State Killer or the East Area Rapist or the original Night Stalker. So Michelle McNamara, who many may know as Patton Oswalt's late wife. And the book is a haunting read. It's an absolute haunting read. The title itself comes from a quote that the Golden State Killer said to one of his victims. He said, "You'll be silent forever and I'll be gone in the dark." The book is amazing. There's also, I think, around a 5 or 6 part miniseries based on the writing of the book as well. I would recommend both of it, but read the book first. It'll give you a flavor of the woman's writing, and it's fantastically written. The quality of writing is just, right up there. So I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara, nonfiction. And my other recommendation is in the opposite direction, something very light-hearted by a comedy genius. It's a show called Resident Alien. There are 3 seasons of it available right now. I've only recently kind of gotten into it, but Alan Tudyk, I've been a fan of him since the days of Firefly. He does a fantastic job as an alien who's hiding out on Earth in the form of a human. It's fantastically funny and at the same time also quite insightful. I would definitely recommend watch Resident Alien.
Very cool.
Okay,
so that's all the time that we have for this episode. I want to thank Garry again for taking time out from his busy schedule to join us on this podcast. And if you guys enjoyed it, and I know you guys enjoyed his set today, let me just tell you that he'll also be back for the next episode as well. Yay! He's agreed to star in 2 episodes as our guest quizmaster. So watch out for him again next week on episode number 76. I thank you all for listening in. We hope you enjoyed the show, that you learned something new. If you liked what you heard, please consider subscribing to our podcast. Leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform, wherever you're listening to us right now. It helps us reach a wider audience, allows more people to enjoy and discover the show. We would also love to hear from you. Feedback, suggestions, even trivia. If there are any questions that you want asked on the show, just send us an email at areyouquizzingme@gmail.com with the name of the quizmaster in the title. You can reach us on Instagram at areyouquizzingme, and there's also a subreddit. Yes, we have a subreddit community, r/areyouquizzingme. So you can go there, post questions, and just, interact with the other fans of our podcast. We appreciate your support. Look forward to sharing more episodes with you in the future. Thanks again for tuning in. Have a great day, and a happy 4th of July and happy Independence Day to everybody in the US listening to us, which is our second largest listener population, which has come from the US. So happy 4th of July.
thank you, Garry. And listeners, please go ahead and give Garry a follow on Instagram and tell him how much you liked the episode. So a reason for him to keep coming back more and more to this podcast. And see you guys next week.
And let me also just shout out Garry's company is called Let's Go Trivia. They are the Rolls Royce of pub quizzes and quizzing. If you're in the New York area, Garry, are there any particular events that you want to tell our audience that where you'd be available or your company would be doing some fun quizzes?
Yeah, absolutely. Probably the best thing is just to go onto our website, letsgotrivia.com, and we have our schedule there. So we have shows from the Bronx all the way, further north into Westchester County, over into Connecticut. So it's easy to find a show depending on obviously where you are. We have some in Queens, New York as well. So letsgotrivia.com, or just follow us on Instagram, Let's Go Trivia, and you'll get all the info there.
Perfect.
Fantastic. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. Have a great day. And that's me signing off.
See you guys next week.